ask you this. So you have a patient lying on top of the table, right? Okay. What's that? That table is, it's like made out of something, isn't it? Isn't it made out of, I mean, it's physically made out of something. So my question is, why doesn't the table show up on your image? You ever thought about that? Why doesn't the table show up on there? It's made out of something, isn't it? It's solid. It seems like you should have an image of the table on top of the patient, wouldn't you?
It'd be like clear. You want to be because of the screens and stuff. Just like
No? Mm-mm.
Does it still come up in the image? You just don't notice it?
What's that now?
Does it still come up in the image? You just don't notice it because the table's bigger than the image area?
No?
Because the table's made out of something that doesn't absorb the primary beam?
It does though. You know, anything solid will absorb the primary, it will attenuate it. Yeah. But you know how it attenuates it? It's the same thickness and it's the same atomic number throughout the whole table. And because it's like that, it does, if the table had a different thickness to it, it would show up. But because it's the same thickness and it's the same Z number throughout the whole table, it's like it's not there. Okay? The table has no contrast. Okay? Now think about our bodies. Our bodies have contrast, don't they? Because our body is made up of all different kinds of atomic numbers. And the primary beam is going to be attenuated differently as it goes through our bodies. And that's why we have that show up on our image. But the table is the same thickness throughout the whole table. It's made out of the same element. It absorbs the primary beam evenly across it. So therefore you don't see it. And the table doesn't show up. The table doesn't show up. So if I was to ask you in the quiz next week, why doesn't the table show up on your image? And the answer is because it's the same thickness and it has the same Z number, the same atomic number throughout it. Okay, so you guys have been looking at abdomen films and you've been looking at chest x-rays, so I think you'll be able to answer this question. If you have a hollow organ, like a lung, what density does a lung show up as on your image? High, so it would be
Dark.
black, right? Air shows up black. And it shows up black because there's nothing there to attenuate the primary beam. It just goes straight through it, and it's going to show up black on your image. What about a solid organ like the liver? What would that look like? Gray. Gray, because that is attenuating the organ. It is attenuating the primary beam. Okay. What if you were to process a film without exposing it to anything? What would it look like? Without exposing it to anything, it would be clear. Okay, it would be clear. Okay. It would be clear. So unexposed areas are clear. Exposed areas are black. Okay, how about contrast agents? And those of you who work in hospitals will be able to help us out a little bit more than those who don't, but let's make a little list of contrast agents. Okay, so in your notes, just make a vertical, put one on top of each other. Each line has its own name. So give me one type of contrast agent that they use in the hospital. What is it? Barium. Barium. That's a good funeral services term. Barium.
How's that spelled?
B-A-R-I-U-M. B-U-R-Y-H-I-M. Sorry. I have a really dry sense of humor. Okay, so there's one. What's another one?
Gadolinium.
Gadolinium, yeah, that's MRI contrast. We don't like that one. Let's not pick that one.
Oh, it's not good enough.
No, that's not good enough for us. Let's just look at general radiography. Gastrographin. Okay, gastrographin is a good one.
What about the injection in the
Yeah, what do they use for that?
The dye.
What's in it?
Off the red with its
Yeah, you
iodine.
could just call it, if you wanna call it, you know, they call it iodinated contrast material, that's what they call that.
Say that again?
Iodinated. Got iodine in it, iodinated contrast material. It's clear, they inject it for IVPs, they inject it for a lot of different things. But we'll mostly see it used for IVPs, but they use it for anything in a blood vessel. So you've got iodinated contrast material, what else?
Isn't air?
Air, yeah. Air is a contrast material. Did anybody ever watch an upper GI done?
Yeah.
Anybody see an upper GI? Did they give them like a little cup full of little fizzy things?
Oh.
Yeah, little crystals, and they pop that in. What'd that do? They put air in their stomach. Kind of like those little pop rocks.
Doesn't it make them burn a lot?
Does, yeah,
They
puts
said
air
try
in your
not to
stomach.
burp.
Try not to burp, yeah, because they want to keep that in there. Anything else? I think that's about it right there, without going into the other modalities. All right, so now let's take a look at these things. What's the first one on our list?
Barium.
Barium. And I want to know what density that would have on the film, on the image.
White,
It would be white. Why?
because it has a high atomic number.
Because it has a high atomic number, it absorbs the primary beam, and it's going to show up white. Wherever that is in the body, it will show up white. It will stop the primary beam from going through it.
So it's a high density?
Has a very high atomic number. Barium has a high atomic number. That's what makes it look white. Okay. What's the next one? Gastrographin. Okay. And Kyle, you mentioned gastrographin. What does it physically look like?
Well, they pour it into the lemonade kind of mixture.
Yeah, but before they pour it in, what color is it?
It's kind of like a rusty.
Kind of like a rusty, kind of a clear.
Yeah, but it looks a little, you see like a little bit of a tint to it.
Yeah, there is got a little bit of a tint to it, but it's kind of almost translucent a little bit, but it does have a little bit of color to it, kind of straw colored almost. Okay, so what's in it? You might know. You know what's in it?
Iodine.
Iodine is in it. Okay, so next to gastrographin, you need to put that it has iodine. It has iodine.
Tastes really bad too.
Yeah, it's got a really foul
it's
flavor to it.
delicious.
But gastrographin has iodine in it, so what they do with this is they have people drink it, or they can use it instead of barium for a BE. They use it. This is kind of like an advanced thing, but you don't have to write in fact, don't write this down, but they use it in case they think the patient has a perforated bowel. If the patient drinks barium and they have a perforated bowel, the barium will go into their peritoneum and will go into their abdomen. And wherever that barium goes, they have to go back in there and they have to physically take it out, because otherwise it will stay there forever. It can't be absorbed and removed by the body. But if they drink gastrographin that's got iodine in it, it's water soluble. So if they drink it and it seeps out into their abdomen, your body will just naturally absorb it and remove it. Okay, so there's a big difference. So if they ever think that they've got a perforated, they like to call it a perforated viscus, which is just a perforated lining of the bowel. If they think that's the case, then they'll use gastrographin. Okay. Uh-huh.
A little bit of a, I guess, advanced question. An iodine allergy. So
Yeah.
they normally change to the barium. But what would they do if they had a perf bowel and an iodine allergy?
Yeah, but you know, that's a trick question you're asking me there. Can anybody have an allergy to iodine? Yeah, they can, can't they?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we not ingest salt every single day of our lives?
Yeah,
What's in salt?
iodine.
So can somebody have an allergy to iodine? Absolutely not. Cannot have an allergy to iodine. Your body needs iodine in order to produce thyroxine, which is a hormone. It requires it. You have to have iodine. So you're not allergic to iodine. You know what you're allergic to? You're allergic to the material that the iodine you're allergic to the material that's holding the iodine. That's what you're allergic to. Okay. So now back to your question.
Okay.
that make sense?
Yeah,
Everybody
I got
follow that?
Yeah.
So it's not the iodine that's in there, it's everything else that's in that material.